going to get started very, very shortly. My apologies. This is the second time doing live in Zoom, and we are not a production company. So we are Circle of Life Coalition. We are very excited to have everybody here today, and so glad that you could attend. My name is Deborah. I'm the chair of the Circle of Life Coalition. And today's presentation, which we will get to shortly, is presented from several wonderful people who do special services for veterans at the end of life. And lots of hospices in our community do that. And that special training also helps them while they're helping folks who are non-veterans, and helps their families, it helps other families. So again, very excited about that. We also have a sponsor for our presentation. Is the sponsor here today? So sorry, because we were running around like chickens. We really appreciate our sponsor sponsoring these presentations monthly. It helps us to keep the lights on, keep different things that a nonprofit needs to do as far as insurances, and also educate them about what's available in the community and allow to get their word out about what is happening within their business. So if you wouldn't mind coming up and introducing yourself, since I was not able to meet you prior, I greatly appreciate your time. I'm so glad you're here.
Well, it's nice to be back in the grounds of Auvergne College. A little short history. I walked this campus back in 1972. I think there was 3 buildings. I drove around for 10 minutes trying to find this building. But anyway, that year was sort of unique because it's the first year that Auvergne accepted male students. And I was one of 6 males with about 250 girlfriends. So it was sort of a fun year. But anyway, I'm Michael Feeney. I'm the director of John P. Feeney Funeral Home, which I took over from my father. I'm also a disabled veteran, 100% disabled, mainly due to Agent Orange in Vietnam, which they told us that stuff's not going to hurt you, it just kills plants. Well, I guess I became part of the plant family. But anyway, anything to do with veterans, our funeral was very involved. My father was a World War II veteran, wounded in North Africa with Patton, sent him home. He had a weak right arm because he was shot in his right arm. And they said that they're going to discharge me. He said I could do something. So they sent him out to Kellogg Hospital in Chicago and put him in charge of about 6 operating suites. Hi, I'm the guy coordinating your operation today, and I'm an undertaker. not a very pleasant introduction. But anyway, for the older people watching in and old like me being here, my father's roommate on base was Bob Eberly, sang for Glenn Miller, and his girlfriend was Helen O'Connell. And together they made the song Tangerine extremely popular. And he stayed at our house many times when they came through Reading. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be able to come and talk anything about. I live, eat, sleep, and drink veteran. Okay, very important to me. I adopted a policy years ago at our funeral home that we will leave no veteran be disposed of unceremoniously. So if the agency calls us and the person is, let's say, found under a bridge in a cardboard box, we will bury them at no cost. And when we bury them at no cost of that, we will have a complete viewing service for them, who have friends, if possible, friends and relatives, if there aren't any, can come and view. We had one Vietnam veteran who died, had nobody, and the newspaper was there covering it. A lot of my Vietnam friends came. They looked choked up in this. And the one gentleman came in with 2 canes, hardly walk, and he was walking out. The reporter walked up and said, "May I ask you a question?" He said, "No." She asked anyway. "What do you think about this man having no relatives and friends?" He said, "He has relatives and friends. It's us," and walked away. Vietnam veterans, like all veterans, are a very tight, cohesive group. But if you know any veterans family and that can need help, have them call us. Also, for those who are watching and those who are here, if you are a veteran, make sure you know where your DD 214 is. We need that to get you your benefits. very important. And if you're in hospice, make sure if you have a veteran you're dealing with, he knows he's dying. Make sure to talk to him or a family. Do you know where your DD-214 is? That's your discharge. We've had at least 4 funerals this year that have been delayed for burial in Indiantown Gap until they could prove that he was a veteran. If we have that DD-214 in hand, he's in. One, we had to wait several months before we could bury them down at Wolford Cemetery down in South Carolina. DD-214s, very important. Thank you.
John, thank you.
Thank you so much. And just a little bit, if there's any chance that your DD-214 was stored somewhere and there was a fire in the 70s, then it's going to be delayed even more. So look for it beforehand, part of planning. Okay. Thank you so much for everything that you do to honor our veterans. It's good to know. Absolutely. And to do this. Now, we will introduce our speakers. I thought they were going to do a song. No? Okay. So we have with us Marty Grimm, who is a bereavement coordinator with Heartland Hospice. She has been with Heartland for 11 years and has co-facilitated We Honor Veterans for 7. She served 4 years in the armed forces, and her husband, Jeff, served in the, oh my goodness, you can tell I'm reading and it's on my phone.
Air Force.
In the Air Force, and her husband, Jeff, served in the Air Force for 27. Her heart is with both our veterans and their families. Nancy Aulenbach. Nancy is a hospice certified LPN with more than 17 years of hospice experience, and her memory of services for veterans and what's available to them has the capacity of a microchip of millions of megabits. Let me tell you, she knows what's out there for veterans. Prior to coming to Heartland, she spent 14 years at the Coatesville VA Hospital, where she developed a passion for working with veterans and their unique needs. Walter Gensemer, a veteran who served as an Army sergeant for 2 tours of Vietnam, now retired after a 41-year career at CARTAC, volunteers his time mentoring local veterans dealing with addiction and poverty, with his primary focus on supporting vets with PTSD. In addition, Walt serves as vet-to-vet hospice volunteer for Heartland Hospice. Without further ado.
Thank you. I'm Marty. I am, as Deb said, a Air Force veteran, and my husband is an Air Force veteran. I also have a father who served in World War II, Army Air Corps, non-combat. He was a meteorologist, and I also have an uncle who fought in World War II, Army infantry, and fought in the Battle of the Bulge. And I have a great-grandfather who fought in the Civil War. He too was shot in the right forearm, and as a result of that was mustered out, and thankfully he did, because 2 children later was my great-grandmother, Sarah. So I think if you pinched me and drew blood, it'd be red, white, and blue. Walt, Nancy, and I are incredibly grateful for this opportunity to share with you some of the unique needs of our veterans at the end of life and how to help them. So let's dig right into my part. First, the facts. We have 19 million vets in the United States today alive, and 1 in 4 deaths are in the United States are veterans. More than 1,800 vets die each day, and only 4% of those veterans die under the care of VA. So that means us, the community, are serving our veterans at the end of life. So that's why we try our very best to serve them at this time in their life. And finally, and this is why I'm glad Nancy's here, 1 in 3 of our veterans are enrolled in benefits. So we hope to give you some good information regarding that. Veterans, they may have unique needs. What may influence these needs? If they've experienced combat or not. And here's the kicker. A non-combat veteran could also have stress, paranoia related to their roles. What war they served in. My father served World War II. He left and came back 3 years later. He did get one stop to marry my mom, and then he headed right back for the remainder of the war. Those fellas that recently fought in Afghanistan and Iraq, they go back and forth. And of course, they're out in the field 6 to 9, 12 months, come back home for a bit, and right back in again. So you're talking about some very serious, stressful circumstances that oftentimes there's alcohol abuse and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, in those situations. POWs, again, everyone is unique, so you never make assumptions, excuse me, but just as an example of assisting a POW at end of life, we had a gentleman who served in Korea and was in a POW, or was a POW, excuse me. And I called it all hands on deck. We had literally every team member in there, giving him that opportunity to tell and retell his story. He needed that at that point in his life. If they have or have PTSD, and our presenter Walt here will address that topic. Were they enlisted or drafted? Individuals who are enlisted are volunteer to join the Army. Those that are drafted may be bitter that they were forced into services. Oh, I threw another one in there in terms of differences. Our gentlemen and men and women who fought in World War II often came home to ticker tape parades. They wore their uniforms long past their service time. And then you speak of our Vietnam veterans upon their return, completely different, could have been spit upon, called names, basically thrown under the rug and left there. So clearly there's going to be some differences in depending upon when they served. It's not unusual for someone who served in the military to have a stoic or rigid side to me. Now, those of you who work with me would not necessarily think of me as stoic or rigid, but I am. In order to be successful with our mission, we're taught to suppress any emotions that show fear. Fear or admitting pain can be a sign of weakness. Big boys don't cry, no pain, no gain. This rigidity and stoicism can present itself at end of life, and that can look like all kinds of things. For example, including non-compliance with medications. One very effective means of meeting our veterans' needs is to connect our veteran hospice patients with a veteran volunteer. You throw two vets together, you immediately have a bond. And it's wonderful. They have a common language, cultural bond, and oftentimes that will dissolve the barriers of stoicism and secrecy, especially those with combat experiences. Give you a quick example. We had a patient and wife on services. Both of them happened to be veterans, and they were basically resisting any offers of, care, medications, just weren't having it. So they asked as a vet for me to go into the home for pre-bereavement. I'm a bereavement coordinator. I went in doing my usual thing, building rapport, not letting on that I was a veteran, just to see, and I wasn't getting anywhere. So I mentioned to them that I understand you both are veterans and I am a veteran. And it was astonishing to see their willingness and receptiveness to, first off, they were willing to really say what was on their minds, and at the same time were more open to ideas and suggestions. So vet-to-vet combos at end of life are crucial. What are some of the outcomes of combat experiences? Veterans are naturally resistant, have good family and social supports as a result of those experiences, had a positive war outcome, and they want to talk about their experiences. That's a positive outcome. The flip side, the traumatic combat experiences can lead a veteran in the opposite direction. Anger, lack of concentration, substance abuse, survivor's guilt. These can be results of such experiences. Also, PTSD can occur from the war experience. And as we said earlier, our presentation, Walt will address PTSD. What do we recommend? Got to make that place safe. They have a radar for whether you're genuine or not. So you absolutely want to have a good heart. If you're having troubles we encourage our staff, if they're having difficulties understanding or whatever, that they come to us, so that they come with an open heart to the veteran. Acknowledging and affirming their feelings, and being aware that that stoicism that they have can stand in the way of acknowledging their physical, emotional, or spiritual pain. We've been guilty of this. To make sure we ask the women that are on services if they are military. It's common for us to forget that. We've actually read an obituary of a woman vet and we didn't recognize them, and that's heartbreaking. They too have experienced or can experience the same level of trauma as our male veterans. Nancy could probably attest to this better than I in her experiences, but they saw trauma, mutilation 24/7. I mean, hypervigilant to that traumatic experience, or they may have been sexually assaulted in the military. So I guess the main takeaway is to remember, of course, not to make any assumptions. Every veteran's time in service is different and should be treated respectfully and without prior assumptions. So now I'd like to introduce to you one of our, and I can say this, and it's wonderful, as veteran volunteer for Heartland Hospice.
Thank you, Marty. My name is Paul Gensemer. Just a little 30-second brief history on myself. I served 2 tours of Vietnam as helicopter crew chief and door gunner. I've been dealing with PTSD myself for 50 years, but I didn't know it until about 30 years ago when I was actually diagnosed with it. So it took me 20 years to get that diagnosis. But anyways, what exactly is PTSD? PTSD is a mental condition brought on by a terrifying event, whether experiencing it or actually living through it. And some of the symptoms may include flashbacks, nightmares, severe anxiety, and constantly thinking of the event. And one thing I want to clarify, and I've learned this through speaking to different groups, non-military and military, the difference between flashbacks and nightmares. There's some confusion there. A flashback is when you feel you actually reliving the condition that pretty much gave you your PTSD, and you're actually feeling like you're actually involved with this action again. Where a nightmare is you're constantly thinking about it, but you don't feel that you're actually there again and you're living it. So that's the big difference. And there was always a lot of confusion on that when we go out and speak to different organizations. Okay, PTSD, as we know it today, has gone through quite a few changes since the late 1800s and early 1900s. Back then, it was known as soldier's heart, battle exhaustion, and soldier's fatigue. Then World War I came along. Then he changed it to shell shock. Then World War II came along, and the name was changed to battle fatigue. Then Korea, it was changed to operational exhaustion. In Vietnam, it was changed to PTSD. And I believe back in 2012, they wanted to change the name to post-traumatic stress injury because of the stigma assumed with disorder. But obviously that never really worked out. Okay. 14 of the most common symptoms of PTSD are, and I'll talk a little bit how some of these affect me. Not every one of these affect me, but some of them do. Feeling upset about things that remind you of the event. That does happen to me pretty often. More so when I have free time to myself, when I have my mind just takes off and I start thinking about some of these things. That upsets me a lot of times. Having nightmares, vivid memories, flashbacks of the event that make me feel like it's beginning all over again. I don't have the flashbacks so much, but the nightmares are still with me, and I honestly believe the only time that's going to stop, as far as my PTSD, is the day I die. I'm in no hurry to do that. So. And feeling emotionally cut off from others, I don't feel that there. So there are veterans who have that situation, dealing with veterans through Veteran Treatment Court that I do and other veteran organizations I'm involved with. Feeling constantly on guard, pretty much so. I got to know my surroundings. I got to know where exits are. And this is after being discharged 50 years ago. And it's something that for the short time I was in Vietnam, you always had to be constantly on guard. Feeling irritated, having angry outbursts, that was probably my worst one. I had a temper on me. And I think most of the veterans I deal with that have PTSD, that is probably their number one thing with the temper. Having difficulty sleeping, I had that too. I'm on a CPAP. I take a sleeping pill. And I still, a good night's sleep for me is 5 hours, an average between 3 and 4 if I'm lucky. Having trouble concentrating, I don't think that's a problem for me. My wife may have a different opinion on that there. Being jumpy or easily startled, yes, that still happens. I hear a loud noise that I can't see, I'll jump. Just a quick little thing here. I was discharged in February 71, July of 71, we went with Governor Mifflin fireworks, and somebody set off a those little dynamites. Now, this is 6 months after I was discharged, and I was just getting ready to take a dive when I heard that. So that's something that never leaves you. Avoid places or things that remind you what happened. Not so much because my wife and I did go back to Vietnam about 10 years ago. Constant use of drugs or alcohol to numb the pain. Fortunately, I've never had that situation. A lot of veterans I deal with do. They got to ease that pain somehow. So it's either drugs or alcohol. Consider harming yourself or others. I've never experienced that. Start working all the time to keep your mind off what you had happened. Like it was mentioned earlier, I had 41 years at Quartet, and I did a lot of 6 or 7 days, so it didn't bother me that much. When I retired, I couldn't understand why the nightmares and everything came back more. And seeing the therapist back then, it was because I had all this free time now I'm retired, and that's why I try to stay involved, keep myself somewhat busy. Pull away from your family and other people, become isolated. I haven't had that problem there either. Okay. So what can you do if you feel you have your PTSD? I think one of the things that helped me is talking to another veteran. You know, through conversation, like Marty just said, we have our own dialogue, so to speak. It's not a foreign language. We have our own dialogue. We have a way to communicate with each other. So talk to another veteran. Talk to your family doctor. Hopefully, you have a doctor at the VA system. Hopefully, you're involved with the VA system, and then they'll see that you get the help. Talk to a family member if you're comfortable doing that. And talk to a mental health specialist. Or do a PTSD screening. And what exactly is a PTSD screening? It's a series of questions, and through these questions and answers, they can pretty much diagnose whether you have PTSD or not. So what is the treatment for PTSD? There are 2 types of treatments, medication and therapy, and I'm on both of them there. But I might add, there is no cure for PTSD. Basically, what they're teaching you is how to put it, so to speak, on the back burner here. But the treatments for, like I say, or therapy, and I've been in and out of therapy for the last 30-some years, and medications definitely help. They help me sleep a little bit better, but not that good. So that ends my part of the presentation. I'll turn it over to Nancy now.
You all appreciate all your effort and everything. So here I am, Nancy Aulenbach. I was never in the service, and I understood what's meant to be a veteran, kind of, until I started working at the Coatesville Veterans Hospital. Then I really kind of understood. And each veteran is so totally individual that you can't put them in a peg. You can't put them in a box. You have to introduce yourself, understand where they're at, and go from there. And sometimes the best thing to do is to be quiet, just to sit with them, because I knew everybody I was working with were veterans. Now, out in the community that I work now, we have to ask, and like Marty said, we actually missed somebody because we didn't ask that important question. Are you a veteran? Did you serve? So the most important thing Mr. Feeney brought up is knowing where your DD 214 is. My presentation is about how we can better serve our veterans. Through the years of working at Coatesville Veterans Hospital, every veteran I met got everything they needed because they were in the system. I come out into the real world and I meet veterans and I ask them, do they have this? Do they have that? And they said, no. And I said, are you enrolled? And they say, no. And I say, why? Well, there's 100 different answers to that question. The important thing is having that DD-214. We have, I'm not even sure where we're at, but you can keep going because I'm just, we have a wonderful asset downtown Reading, 7th and Cherry Street. It's our Veterans Affairs building. Every month, I think it's every Tuesday, they have a veterans benefit meeting. It is open to everyone, to volunteers, to family members, to veterans. You go in, they give you a packet, it explains everything. The most important thing in life for a veteran is to get enrolled. The answers that I get, I didn't do active duty or I didn't serve out of country. It doesn't matter. Our veterans, I learned, were trained in their first 6 to 8 weeks to kill or be killed. Even that alone can start the stress process. You know, you don't have to be serving in war to have PTSD. So the important thing is, where do you go? What do? You get your DD-214. If you don't have it, you can call the Office of the Veterans Affairs and they will help you. They have wonderful people there that will send you in the right direction. There's also a website, va.gov. It will have all the wonderful information. So why is it important to get enrolled? If you're young, I hear people say, I have great insurance, I don't need the veterans. In middle, I'm doing okay, I don't need the veterans. Oh, now you're at end of life. Now you need the veterans. You're not enrolled. What's available for me? What can I have? If you've already come on to hospice and you're not enrolled, we can get you enrolled within 5 days. We have a wonderful program up at the Lebanon VA Hospital through their hospice program that will get you enrolled. But what do you need? DD-214. You fill out the paperwork. We take that paperwork, we fax it directly to Erin Isles. She gets you enrolled. But now you're in home, you can't get out. Things are different. You're enrolled right at end of life. You only will get a certain amount of things. One of the things they will pay for is 90 days in an inpatient hospice. You can go up to Lebanon VA has inpatient hospice, Coatesville Veterans Hospital has inpatient hospice, and there are veteran associated or contracted facilities locally where they will pay for 90 days, which amounts to $45,000. So you can save that much money. You also keep the veteran's income. If you're not enrolled, the nursing home or Medicaid takes over, and then you no longer get any of those benefits. So if you wait to the very last second, you lose everything. The only thing you get, like Mr. Feeney says, is your burial. You know, the little things that they give you at end of life. So if you're a person aged 60, 25, whatever, you get enrolled in veteran benefits. You only need to see a doctor once a year, get your physical, you're enrolled. And then every time there's a newsletter or something that comes out that says, oh, we just found this out, you will be notified. So what benefits can you get if you're enrolled before hospice? You can get, now it's like, Walt's enrolled, he's great, now he needs home care. He's enrolled. We call the VA clinic, we say, okay, he needs some home care. He gets it. He needs Ensure. He gets it. He needs a stair lift. He gets it. But once you're on hospice, if you're not enrolled, you don't get that. So the important part is getting enrolled in VA benefits prior to coming on to hospice. You're enrolled. We had a gentleman, it was wonderful. I'm so grateful he's enrolled. He was able to get home care, Ensure, for things that Heartland Hospice or now ProMedica Hospice could not get for that. people who are enrolled last minute, what can they do for me? Not very much. I had a gentleman that was in a nursing home. The wife was struggling because they were taking his social security check because he had to pay for the nursing home. What can we do? What can they do for us? Unfortunately, we had to say nothing because he was not previously enrolled in VA benefits. One of the most important things that I've learned through being a veteran nurse and now working with Heartland and ProMedica is that there are only two entities in life that are willing to die for you: a veteran and Jesus Christ. And that hit me so hard because I never realized that until I was in my 40s, that they signed their name on that paper saying, I am willing to do anything for my country, up and including giving up my life. So that's where my passion comes for my veterans. So every veteran I meet, the first thing after I greet them and thank them for what they've done, I ask them if they're enrolled, because that's important. And a lot of times you get pushback. Even the veteran center gets pushback because they say, I don't need it. They think they're gonna, dig up all the things that are happening. Just go and get enrolled. Be with the veterans. That's my most important thing. So any questions or? I'm done.
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned that you can expedite an end of life if you have your DD 214. What if someone like me wishes to enroll and you go through the regular process? Do you have a sense of how long it takes for them to enroll you?
From what I understand from Ken LeBron, because it's all computerized now, which makes a big difference, it's usually between 30 days and 90 days. So it depends on how, if you do it yourself on the computer, which you can, va.gov 1010 easy form. You fill that all out, you send it in. And of course, I don't trust cyberspace at all. So I prefer people would go into the VA office. Then they have a VSO person, which is a veteran service officer, go through it. And what they really recommend is to do that, because if you miss one box, it gets kicked right out. So the importance of filling it out yourself and then taking it down to them. And there will many people, but I know one of them is Sheila. She will go through it step by step and make sure that everything is checked and able to be enrolled.
Thank you.
I think it's a great question.
And I'm not sure if there's a chat on the Zoom or not.
There is. If we
Okay.
could if there's any other questions or comments, anybody that's had a different experience with some of the VA benefits in Berks County can talk to that would be great.
When you were talking about the burial benefit, a lot of people don't realize compared to the most expensive cemetery in Berks County, that burial benefit comes up to over $7,000. Free grave space,
They're not gonna,
free opening and closing, free marker for them and their spouse. And whether they're cremated, they can go in a columbarium, both in the same crypt, or the guy's first, second. If they're buried in the ground, the spouse goes right on top. So it is a very valuable benefit, but again, the DD 214 is needed. And there's additional death benefits if the person is retired, dies from a combat-related illness, or dies in a VA facility. As a retiree, you're entitled to a full honor guard, i.e. Casket bearers, firing squad, rifle salute, military instated firing squad.
I don't know that the people on Zoom were able to hear your response.
Okay.
So I'm so sorry about that. But you were saying that the opening and close, there's benefits for opening and closing.
The grave,
Uh-huh.
opening and closing,
All right.
the vault,
The vault.
the marker for both them and their spouse. A lot of veterans do not know that their spouse is included. That even if the veteran is buried in another cemetery, the spouse can still be buried at Indiantown Gap,
But only in Indiantown Gap.
military cemetery.
Okay, but not other cemeteries around Berks County. Okay.
Well, this is a little better.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
I don't know if that sister remembers me. I think she may have given me feeling brave on this here. But anyway, yeah, it's a very big benefit when you calculate, like I said, to the most expensive cemetery in Berks County, and there's two about the same, they're owned by the same company. It's about a $7,000 savings per person. And that does not include memorialization or a marker. Or if you need that gap, you get the marker with both the veteran's name on, his dates of birth, death, service, and any major awards he received. And the spouse would be her name, date of birth, date of death. They even allow you up to 15 characters or so to put your own description on the bottom, something that is personal. He loved his country, together forever. I wanted to put on mine, I told you I was sick. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, and you can get markers in the cemeteries in Berks County. It's just, I wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. Now, there's requests for the slides. So we will download, you can download it onto my computer that I have there, the emails. That will not be public when we do this broadcast. We do record this and put it on our website. So if you were late or you want to watch it later or show it to a loved one or someone else, you certainly can do that. Okay. Does every county have a Veterans Affairs office in Pennsylvania?
Yes, they do.
Okay, so it's just a matter of doing a Google search or 411 assistance. We still have that.
Right, and if they don't have the computer, obviously, a lot of people don't have that. So the best thing is, we do still get phone books, thankfully, and each
I don't.
office.
I don't. We don't get phone books.
I do.
Yeah.
But yes, and the thing is, VA.gov, and even if they call the veteran number, there is a phone number, the main, like VA.gov number, they will tell you who your local branch is.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay.
And we're very lucky, like I said, to have our local VA office at 7th and Cherry. And the meetings on every Tuesday, if you pull up their calendar, they have almost every day there's an event happening, and the center is open again. Of course, they recommend social distancing and wearing your mask. But there are wonderful people, and it's every Tuesday at 1:30. They have a benefits meeting, and that goes over all the benefits. Obviously, we're talking about end of life and why is it important? The important thing is what can we do for you? What can the VA do for you? And it is promised every veteran, no matter where you served, how you served, is entitled to VA hospice benefits, and whether it's at home or in one of the facilities.
Okay. There's a comment on chat for Zoom that I want to share with the audience members here. If anyone has any questions about what services we can provide for our veterans, please contact me at thomas.ashman@promedica.org. Very proud of our team at ProMedica, in little brackets, Heartland. Thank you to our presenters, and that's true. Very good job, very good service that you provide in our community. And thank you to our sponsor, Amy Funeral Home, for doing this. It was very appropriate for that. Are there any more questions, comments, things that you are aware of in the community? Up, Marty.
I'm putting you on the spot, Nancy. You may not have the answer to this, but I think it would be very beneficial for our organization to have someone from the county office and present the benefits to a group. Are you aware if they do that type of
I
service?
think since COVID, it's really not been happening, but the gentleman that used to do that, his name was Bob, and he's probably still doing it. They literally have a big round table down at the VA center, and he will accommodate at least 15 to 20 people. That's why he does it every week. And it's very important because it goes from soup to nuts. If you see the booklet that these VSOs, veteran service officers, have to learn, it's this thick. And thankfully they do have it computerized that they can click in the answers and questions and things like that. So that's why it's important to get enrolled through them, because there's so many benefits. It's not just end of life benefits. It's what you can have, what the spouse, like Mr. Feeney was saying, that a lot of veterans don't know that the spouse also can be involved. But my father-in-law never served. I mean, he was overseas, but he wasn't during wartime, and they were able to put a ramp in for him and adjust his bathroom because he was enrolled. You wait to the very last second, and unfortunately, a lot of things drop off once you're on hospice because you no longer need those things because they're expecting you to be bedbound or in your home. So the ramps usually don't come in, the motorized wheelchairs don't come in. So that's why the importance. And then at the end of life, we had a gentleman, unfortunately, who was married twice before, and he was living with his wife, not wife, girlfriend, and they were elderly, but they didn't want to do the marriage thing again. And they were together about 20 years. He went into a nursing home, and it took his whole income that she needed to live on, where if he was enrolled, she would have been able to keep his income. The VA would have paid for his stay at the hospital, and she would have had at least 3 months to kind of reorganize her life to adjust to just her income again. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. And you know, you can only pull a few strings. The government's very strict on their rules.
That's so true. That is so very true.
Deb?
Yes. Oh, Marty.
I'm always learning. Walt, if you don't mind, what inspired or what caused you to choose to get the treatment you needed?
Well, like I said, I had a temper, and it was through my wife. It was either get help or get divorced. And fortunately, Jan and I were married 50 years. So that's what, and I was really, for a short period, very short period of time, I really hesitant on it, because my opinion of PTSD, not knowing anything about it back then, that was for the weaker guys. And I was, not that I'm a strong guy, but I just felt I was stronger than a lot of guys, some of the guys I served with. So, like I said, a short period of time, and I got the help, and it was the best thing I could have done for myself. But unfortunately, trying to convince other veterans to get this help, you know, I know when I first was diagnosed, I was ashamed of it, because that made me weak. And through speaking about it, it's not a weakness, it's a mental condition, you know. And Mr. Feeney knows, being a combat veteran himself, you know what it's like. So I'm with the veterans I'm dealing with, I'm looking for that way that I can convince somebody, get the help, you know. And a few veterans I talked to said, go test drive it. I would say, go test drive it, see what happens. You might learn something. So that's, like I said, because of my wife is the only reason. If she would have never pushed it, I don't know to this day if I would have gotten help or not.
And it's so true, because a lot of people wait, you know, we don't even know, the families don't even know a lot of things until end of life. And that's when the stories start to come out. And at that point, the therapy and treatment isn't going to help. And I'm going to correct you. It's not a mental health disorder. It's a physical disorder. It affects your whole body.
Well, yes, that's
You know,
true.
it might start in the mental health part, but it's something that physically happened to you. And Marty had said that the women, the nurses that served, they actually have a much harder time because they weren't in action, but every day they saw the trauma that came from it. And they're pushed to the side because they are not a warrior. Well, anybody that goes into as a veteran, to me, is a warrior. So it's a matter of making sure at end of life, we treat them with the respect that they need and give them the space to tell their story. Because some of them wait until the very last second. Yeah.
And I think it's also that what we're offering is assistance to the family.
Yes.
We provide this training, my portion plus a bunch of other below stuff. That's me being spontaneous. But it's good stuff. But what is good is when I start to say these symptoms of PTSD, for example, there's like an aha moment from the adult child. Oh, my father had these symptoms. Never could understand her father, but after hearing what this looks like, they had a greater respect for their father, whether he was deceased or not. But so this is absolutely helping our families. Families have told us, Nancy, you can attest better than I, that a lot of times in these moments, they're saying things they've never said before, and how meaningful that is to the family.
You know, one of the cool things about being, I was not in the service, but being a nurse at the VA, is I get that calming effect to the patients, because they do have that, well, what do you know attitude. And then I put my hand on their arm and I said, well, I worked at the VA hospital for 14 years. And they also have that almost melting effect, like, okay, she's got it, she understands. And I will get many stories that the family said they never heard before, they never knew before. And it's just an amazing thing. I drive around Reading constantly because I'm a home healthcare nurse. And if you see all the flags in every one of these cemeteries, Berks County is so involved in the military, not just the ones that are still alive. Look at all the ones that have already passed. The last I looked, which is a while ago, there was 27,000 veterans still alive in Berks County. And one of the things that we do is we have the stars for our veterans, the stars, and I have one of them with me today, TY. And we do, these are stars from the American flag, and they are retired and preserved. And one of my goals is to get one of these stars into every veteran's pocket, because they don't always feel that they were valued. So it's important for, and this was started by a lady in New York. This was not my brainchild. This was stars from our troops. So we do give them. And what I say to my veterans, and I call them my veterans, because if this is my country, then you are my veterans. And it's so important to make people realize, no matter if they served a month, 20 years, that they are important. They are why we are here today. So I hand them to this and I say, this is from a flag that you so proudly defended. It has been retired and preserved to remind you that you are not forgotten. So, you know, everybody, even if you're not a veteran, everybody knows a veteran. It's so important. And not to just say, thank you for your service. It's to say, you know, how much you really appreciate what you did for our country.
Most definitely. And those hospices that have We Honor Veterans are also those nurses and aides and volunteers have some background training in symptomatology that can be unique to veterans. Suddenly cowering, well, they might be cowering because their plane was under attack or something else was going on. That some of those very deep-seated memories that they never talked about or had nightmares about, or even if they did but didn't share with their family, can come up, and some of that symptom management can be very difficult. So any hospice with We Honor Veterans behind their name has that special training also to recognize what could possibly be going on. Sister?
Since we're adjacent to Alvernia University and the sponsors, just information, check your colleges and universities for programs. Alvernia does, for at least 10 years or more, have a veterans office. Peggy Bowens is in charge of the new person in charge of it, and the extraordinary programs plus a full ride education. So check out Alvernia University and veterans.
Excellent.
All right, Mr. Feeney.
Yeah, just want to make sure that veterans know when they become a veteran, because I had that question asked me this week. If you served in the United States military for one day outside of training, that's very critical. Basic training, advanced training, you're on training orders. But if you serve one day more after your training, you are eligible for many VA benefits, including burial and dugout. A lot of people think, I didn't serve overseas, like you showed on the slide, I wasn't in combat. Combat and serving overseas does not make you a veteran. Putting that uniform on and serving one day on active duty. Now, if you get injured during duty, you might get medically discharged, which can also avail you to many benefits. Okay, but don't think because you have not served in combat, you have not carried a rifle, you have not pulled the trigger on a rifle, that you're not a veteran. The Desert Storm, first Desert Storm at VFWs and American Legions that I attended, a lot of people say, that wasn't a war, it only lasted 100 hours. I was in a war, I was there for 5 years, okay? Yeah, but they don't forget, and this goes in the Joe in the middle, that they sat in the desert for 6 months, not knowing if they're gonna be nuked, bombed, biological warfare, talk about PTSD. That's a lot of strain on the mind. And a lot of my friends have that, as he does, as I do. And it doesn't go away. When I was talking about there in my first meeting, I almost flashed back there. Okay? And I'm sure it does happen in a moment. A sound, a comment, an odor, a noise can put you back. You ever watch TV when they're interviewing World War II vets on the History Channel and see the vet, chin starts quivering, he goes like this. He is back at that battle, back at that battle. and it's fresh and it's hard. And if anyone, and you don't have to be a veteran to get PTSD. You could be driving down a highway and witness a horrific accident and try to help that person, they die in your hands, in your arms. That's PTSD, what you're gonna suffer from that. You will never forget the incident. So let's just say PTSD is something that's traumatic and you'll never forget it. That's a good definition of PTSD. But 1 day in service and you're qualified for many veterans benefits.
The other question that comes out frequently is, well, I want to save it for the veterans that, you know, deserve it. Well, one of the things that's super important is every veteran deserves it. It doesn't matter, like Mr. Feeney said, you serve 1 day out of your training, or if you retire. Every veteran has that benefit, and there's enough finances so that every veteran gets those benefits.
One way to tell them to let someone else tell you that you are not a veteran. Let someone in the veteran.
Yes.
I think if anyone has any questions on that, go to the Veterans Office, and you're talking about Sheila.
Yes.
I appointed Sheila to that office when I was the county commissioner in 1989, and she's retiring shortly.
Oh,
And we're gonna miss her because, you know, talk about an open book, knows everything about
She knows her
veterans.
stuff.
She was a black lady, got on the elevator at the courthouse on the 3rd floor. I got on at the same time she did, and she was very sad looking. I said, "Sir, apologies there. I heard I could probably get a job at the county. I really need a job." And they said there was nothing available. We went down to the first floor, came back up 3rd floor, took her to personnel and said, "Put her in the veterans office." And she's there and she's gonna retire, probably about 88, 98, 2008, 2018, 30 some years. She's been in that office.
She does a good
she knows
job.
what she's doing.
Oh, she
Yeah,
does.
she does. Yeah, I know
And,
who.
Yeah, everyone, even LeBron, he was the right-hand man to our previous guy there, who was fantastic. I think he said one time, that we get more veterans benefits in Berks County than Philadelphia gets.
Wow, that's
Yes.
amazing. Okay, one more question or a comment, and then we'll give you back some time. Talk about some other things.
Good morning, my name is Samantha. I'm the funeral director at another funeral home in Berks County, and I just want to reiterate a statement that both Mr. Feeney as well as our presenters have said throughout the presentation today. It's so important to have your DD 214. I can't tell you how frustrating it is to be sitting with a family and I know their loved one is entitled to these benefits and I can't file for them. It's heartbreaking, and as the daughter of a veteran, the sister of a current active duty serving sailor, I consider it my duty to make sure that the people we're serving get what they're entitled to. It is never too early to start applying for benefits. Our men and women have earned them many times over. So please find out where your loved one's discharge paperwork is. Make copies of it. Have them on hand, file it with the Register of Wills. Make sure your funeral home, if you have pre-arrangements, has a copy of that paperwork. It is so necessary.
And that's one of the cool parts about what we do at ProMedica Heartland, is that's, as soon as they're admitted to our services, that's one of the first questions we ask is, are you a veteran? Are you enrolled in benefits? And do you know where your DD 214 is? So, you know, it is a benefit to have this team help those veterans and other loved ones at end of life, because unfortunately, sometimes we have, or fortunately, I don't know which way you put it, we have people that are not veterans, but they know a veteran or their brother, you know, things like that. So just our open conversation about it leads to other family members saying, oh yeah, it's a good idea if we get that. So it is great to have that open conversation.
Right. I think that there's education of folks who are currently in the service to, which didn't happen before, encouraging them to sign up even if they're not going to use them, to remain signed up and so forth. Neighbor of my uncle's, he was like, why didn't he ever sign up for anything? He did 4 years in the Navy right before Vietnam. He did no more than that, and he wasn't encouraged to, and he didn't think he qualified for anything. But here he is, and he came out being encouraged by the Veterans Administration to do it. So I was pleased to hear that that's what they really do, encourage folks who are in now to sign up, even if you're not going to think you're going to use the benefits, to at least be enrolled. Okay, good conversation. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, everyone on Zoom, for coming. Next, I'm going to talk about next month, the Circle of Life Coalition on December 2nd, surviving a parent's worst nightmare. We will have a couple here, Mr. and Mrs. Schulk, will discuss what they describe as the earthquake of the loss of a child. So please come, join us on Zoom, and they will also bring some resources with them. I want to thank our sponsor again, Feeney Funeral Home, 610-372-4160. Call, ask questions, start your pre-planning. Right. If you have any ideas for future presentations, this is a safe space to discuss anything related to quality of life, end of life. You can go to our website and email us, circleoflifecoalition.org. You can place comments there. Those emails come to us. We do answer them. And we're always looking for things, presentations for the community that will be helpful to improve quality of life and quality end of life. Did I miss anything, everyone here in the audience? No? Thank you so much for attending. Please answer the poll online. We take comments seriously. You can comment on our website also. Thank you.